This one doesn't look too good. Too white like the flakes, too thin, too ugly, too weak, too much hair, filled with lies. Just too much of everything. How much does she go for? Do not underestimate her. Her look may be deceptive. She is as strong as a camel. She walked 100 miles from the Sahara to the Leke Island. She's worth the price I've given you. You can pay 30 instead of 35 shillings. I'm giving you a good price. Take her. Well, I don't believe in any God. I worship money because money answers all things. I'll pay 25. If you are not selling, then I'll go to another dealer. I don't have time to waste on some useless slave. Okay, pay the 25 shillings. I watched in silence as the first dealer counted the money before handing me over to the second man. He was happy to be free from me. I have been with him for long and nobody had been able to buy me off. And when he finally sold me, he was happy because he was not totally at loss. He bought me in the Sahara from a slave market after the merchant offloaded us from the sea to the shore. He bought me for 23 shillings and sold me for 25 after working under the scorching sun and arriving at the present port. The second dealer made me walk so fast as he led me with other slaves through the passageway. We all seemed to be between 11 and 17 years, not more than that. I was the most free among them. I was tired, hungry, thirsty, yet I had no right to complain because I was only a slave. My fate had been decided. It had been predestined, but I was not scared. I might be in a foreign land filled with foreign gods carved in different shapes and sizes. I might have lost my mother and father, with Joe, my brother, and Catherine and Deb, my two sisters, to the cold hand of war, but I'm not scared. This is Tama, a story written by Ama's Heart. My name is Ama's Heart, and I'm a Genti storyteller.
Hi, good morning, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Tongues and Voices. I'm going to be your host for today and for future editions. My name is Ojiugo Uche, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Genti Media. Really excited to have you here with me as we start this series. Of Tongues and Voices, the idea is to have conversations with actors, with writers, with creators, with entrepreneurs, working around expression, around creation, and really at the intersection of African languages and cultures. That is also very related to what we do at Genti. So at Genti, what we've built, is a platform, for example, through our app, where you can actually listen to a range of audio dramas, audio stories, audio books, religious messages, and right now in 12 languages, right? So we have over 4,000 hours of content that you can listen to. And for us, it's about creating the community and bringing together these resources. And no better way to start this series than to talk to the person that has been at my side throughout this journey, building this along with me. In this first episode, I'll be speaking with my co-founder and COO, He also happens to be my brother, Ekemeze Uche. I'm really excited for you guys to hear our conversation as we take you through and hear from him particularly about the journey so far building Genti, how he got here, what it's been like, and some of our hopes and dreams for the future. Welcome, Ike. Thanks for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you for having me. Fantastic opportunity to be speaking with you today. Really excited about what we're starting off with this. Thank you.
Awesome. So, AK, I'll just do I've sort of introed you a bit, right? So, AK, in addition to being my brother, co founder, and COO of Genti, is also someone who, we share a lot of the same journeys. We went to a lot of the same schools and, worked at the same place before, Genti. And in many ways, he also inspired me to start Genti, even though he didn't know it. He's also someone who, is enthusiastic about poetry, about politics. He's also recently married. So there are different facets of you, Ike. Of course, you have so many angles, right? As a brother, as a tech executive, as poet enthusiast, politics enthusiast. I mean, that's just everyone, right? We are multifaceted. But I've just given a hint about what you are and we can who you are, and we can't go, through it all, definitely in this session. But I'm curious to hear from you in your own words. If you can just tell us a bit about who AK is as we start off this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Ojiugo. As you were talking, I was just like, I was thinking, now maybe this, with all the different things you were using to describe me. But I think you've touched on. I mean, obviously we're siblings. Come from a family of four. I'm the last born. And I think, yeah, like I'm okay. A bit about myself, right? I was born in Enugu in southeast Nigeria, but grew up primarily in Port Harcourt. And then when I was 10 years, I went off to boarding school in Abuja, Loyola Jesuit College, where you were also there.
Hmm.
And then did that for 6 years. I think you went off to Costa Rica to do your IB program. I went off to Togo. So I spent 2 years in Togo, Lome, doing IB as well. And then after that, went on to St. John's, where you were also, both the New Mexico campus and the Annapolis campus, St. John's College in the US. And then from there, I went on to do my master's in London at the LSE. And then sort of came back to Nigeria, worked at McKinsey. Well, yeah, I worked at McKinsey and Company because that's actually where I did my NYC, even though I did my camp in Adamawa. But I did my NYC in Lagos at McKinsey, which you were also there then as well. And then after that, spent about 3 years. Yeah, about 3 years there. Then did a bit of a stint at Cross Boundary, where I was working in the research, doing sort of like energy finance and research. And then after that, I mean, but like basically throughout that whole, like I think by the time I
Hmm.
was coming to the end of my journey at McKinsey, I had I knew I wanted to go and do something different.
Hmm.
I wanted to try something entrepreneurial. I knew I always wanted to do that. So the opportunity came for me to basically go off and go to business school, and I could take a year, a year break before I went on to business school. So I decided to do that, and that's when I went to Cross Boundary. And I think while I was there, sort of um, part of there was a realization that I wanted to do something else. I also don't think I was like really plugged in into the work that I was doing. I think just because I just felt like I needed to be doing something else. So yeah, within 8 months I had left. Started working on an idea for basically e-commerce, an intersection of e-commerce and fintech with three other people. They started it, and then I came on board. I was working on that for a few months. And then Ojiugo, right, I think we had a conversation about Genti. um, you know, anyway, the idea we can go into a bit more detail, but sort of the idea
Mhm.
into what it is today. And I started working on that with you. I think our first ever proper session for Genti was in August
Yeah.
2020. And then I think by January, I basically started working on Genti full time. And yeah, we've been working on Genti ever since. I think you also mentioned I'm got married last year. Well, 2 years ago actually, December 2021.
Mhm.
Uh, so there's that. So in addition to all the other things I do, I'm also a husband. So yeah,
Yeah, so okay, I mean you've taken us through, your storied journey, right? With, a bunch of schools and a bunch like prestigious schools and institutions and opportunities. And one thing that I don't know for people, listening to this, if it wasn't really clear, but here you are, aka, newly married with all the responsibility that comes with that. And essentially, giving up the opportunity for a paid ride to business school in order to go into entrepreneurship. I'm curious, right? I know we've had this discussion, but that is so against the trend. What inspired you to do that? Like, talk
yeah.
me through a bit more of that. What inspired you to do that at such a point in your life as well, where I can only imagine the pressures rising and increasing for you to, be, a provider, and yet going into a space of such uncertainty when you didn't have to. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. There are a couple of things. So before I answer that question, I remember that in my second year at McKinsey, I was sitting down working on my laptop in the office, and Tolu Oniyongi, I think you know her, Safiat, was there as well, and we were talking, and she looked at me and she was like, I'm so like I don't like I feel like you're meant to be doing something else other than consulting. And I was surprised, and I was like, really, why do you say that? She doesn't know. She just feels like, yeah, I'm doing this consulting thing, but I probably should be doing something else,
Mm,
right? Um, so why I just say that is because like even when I knew that I sort of had, I mean, I was very excited to get to McKinsey, and I'm grateful that anybody who talks to me about, consulting opportunity, I always say like, please take that opportunity because I think it's a great way for you to sort of like be grounded in the world of like corporate and business or just like the professional world. And I think there's like tremendous like abilities to like learn skills and develop yourself even beyond the professional world. But going into McKinsey, I knew that I didn't really want to take um, the sort of traditional corporate path uninterrupted at the very least, right?
mm,
Like the idea of like, making partner wasn't really something that, gingered me, let's say. There were
mm,
other things I knew I wanted to do. And so when I got in, I just knew that, okay, I want to learn as much as possible. And then eventually I want to go try my hands on different things. So different ideas have popped up in my head, right? There was a time when I was talking about going to China. uh, I think part of that was just I just wanted to do something different, right? And
yeah.
just make sense of the world in an unstructured way. And so that idea had always been there for me. But really, I think the way it happened, like I said, it's typically these things are like a mixture of a bunch of things. But basically when that natural point of departure from McKinsey, right, with the opportunity to go to business school, right, and come back, I think I thought about it, right. By the time I sort of started doing, working across boundary and realized, I do think I want to do something beyond corporate. I remember I went back, I had a conversation with folks at McKinsey, and I just I told them, I was like, I'm not taking the business school offer, right? And I remember it was Bimbola I was talking to, and she was like, "Are you sure you want to make this decision? Like, you can still maybe try and get some more time, explore before you." Because I told her I was working on a startup, whatever. She was like, "You can take more time," and I was like, "Well,
Mm,
I'll just be stringing you guys along. I know I want to go and do something else." And but the truth of the matter is, like, I had a very honest conversation with Ifemi. I don't think we were married then, but I had a very honest conversation with her, and that's my wife now. And she was sort of like up for it because she knew, right off,
mm,
like when we met, because when we met, I was still at McKinsey, but she knew that I wanted to go and do something else. So and it made sense, right? Like it was just like, okay, let's, and the way we do it is like we work, like I'm working, and then we have points where we just kind of like check in and say, okay, how do we think this is going? That kind of stuff. So we review, and so I just knew that there was no other natural like break off point or jump off point for me, because if I ended up going to business school, that would be 2 additional years. I come back, I probably have to work an additional 2 years. At that point, right, like there's a baby in the house, maybe another baby on the way.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't make sense, right, to basically take that decision then. So it just felt like, okay, before the babies start rolling in, by that time,
Before
even
Pampa's money starts compiling
before
up.
exactly before papa's money, before sort of hospital bills and whatnot, and also just kind of like, I mean, you need to there's just a level of security that as you start having kids, right, you need to have. So I just felt like, okay, let me do the grind now, right? Instead of business
Mm,
school, let me spend those years grinding, and maybe I would have been able to sort of like get to a point where, okay, it makes sense that we're able to sort of continue on our journey as a married
mhm.
couple, because we've set some things up. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's kind of why I made the decision when I made the decision. But the idea of like sort of going out to do something or building something had always been there for me.
yeah. Yeah, okay, I know, from, of course, conversations we've had, deep conversations we've had over the years, that that's always been a bug, that you had to build something, to make a mark, to exert your will on this world. And I want to share, right, before I lead into my next question, I want to share because in many ways, Genti was my idea, the idea of sort of building a platform and a space where where we could have stories with a focus on local storytellers and local languages. And that was born out of years leading up to that, of a fascination with languages and the limited spaces we had to tell those stories in, right? So everything from reading, Kenyan author Ngugi wa Thiong'o's Decolonizing the Mind, The Politics of Language in African Literature. That book was so pivotal for my, way of thinking about language and the importance of telling our stories and creating more spaces for us to do that. But anyway, this is just to say there's a story behind it. That was one point, but there were other points that that of and we might touch on. But here I was, I had towards the end a slightly different journey from you. After McKinsey, I worked briefly in government transparency at budget. But after that, I said, this was 2020. In the middle of the pandemic, I resigned from my job, which was a bit crazy because who does that? But I felt like I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to go to school, to business school? Do I want to go into, like politics in some way? So do I want to do like a master's in public admin? Do I want to do finance? Do I want to study linguistic anthropology? I mean, there's just so many ideas, right? Do I want to start something? And around that time, Ike, you were you had been working, you had recently started working on a fintech idea, and I saw you do that. I saw you, waking up without any structure because you're trying to build a business and trying to exert your will and create something out of nothing. And just having those conversations with you, seeing what you were doing, inspired me, and I was like, there are all these options that I have. That's true. And I don't think there's anyone that will be a wrong path per se. But what about spending time? This thing that you've been thinking about, this idea of local language creation, sorry, local language expression, and I mean, it already happens, right? But curating that, collating all the material, making that a bigger thing, building it into a company that's financially viable, where creators can earn. How about putting your mind to this? Look at what AK is doing. So, in many ways, right? The idea might have been there, but the idea was fermenting for I don't know, 10 years, and it was fermenting as an area of interest, not a business idea. But it took me seeing you in that space, in that entrepreneurship space, to say, yo, this is powerful what AK is doing. And at that point, I thought to myself, well, he has already committed to another company, but let me see if I can poach him because, you know, AK and I have, been close for a long time. We've been very close since, we were young. And I was just like, there's no one else I would want to build this with. Um, so yeah, anyway, so that leads me, that's a bit of the story, but that leads me to the question, which is, I approach you with this idea because I've seen you building something, and I say, hey, AK, how about we try and make this a business? Why did you come on board?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why this
Yeah.
idea?
No, so
Why me? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, so I think it's a good question. So, I mean, I think, yeah, like you said, right, the idea has sort of been fermenting in your mind for a while. And the interesting thing is that at different points, you had also sort of like approached me to be involved, or at least I would express interest. Like, for example, there was a time when I think it was supposed to be like an audio show or a podcast.
Yeah.
And there were times when it was sort of like fluid. So it could be about language, but we're thinking, okay, maybe culture. I think there was a time where we even thought about, okay, is there like a food component to this where like the local cuisines in like different parts
Mm-hmm.
of Nigeria. But basically, like, right, that whole idea of kind of like rooted in like local cultures and having that as like a media, sorry, like having that as, some type of media outputs that you put out in the world. I think that you have been running with that idea. But because when you approached me, like you said, right, I was already doing something in startup, but I think you had also, because then you were sort of doing consulting freelance, and you had also worked, doing consulting for a startup as well. I remember you telling me like, look, like I'm here helping
Mm.
these guys do strategy, and yeah, the work is interesting, but it's like these guys are young, similar,
Mm-hmm.
quite very similar backgrounds to me. They've done the work of trying to figure it out, convince people to like back them, right? Like why can't I do the same? And we started talking about Genti, and we I think there were a few iterations, and then we came to this. Okay, this is what we think it should be. But then there was a question of, is this a business that would make sense, and is there actually a market for this? And I think even beyond, is there a market for this? Is like, are there places we can draw inspiration from? So we started searching, right? And we saw the Pocket FM example, right? I mean, these were basically trying to do something very similar to what we're doing, or they were doing something very similar to us. And they were doing this in India, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
saw how successful like that was, right? We also saw like anecdotally, right, people we knew in Nigeria who were listening to their platform and were sort
Mm-hmm.
of like really enraptured by it. So for me, I think by the time, because I think we had those conversations, did some research. So I think by that time, it allowed me to sort of get invested in the idea, and I saw the potential. But then, right, I think it was one thing to say, okay, I think this is a good idea. But the other thing in terms of wanting to sort of like join you on the journey, I think number one is um, I was, I mean, the soil was fertile for that type of thing because I had left corporate, I was doing startup. So I was still very much in that. I want to do something in startup, right? And sort of what I was working on, we sort of started hitting a few roadblocks, right? So I wasn't opposed to trying a different idea. Also, remember, these were people I joined while they were well on that journey, right? But for
Mm-hmm.
this, I would have the opportunity of actually starting it with you. So there was something very appealing about that. But I mean, I think for me, it was just kind of like you said, you had been talking about this idea for a while. I know like your level of sincerity. I knew that this was not like if you were going to do this, you were going to do it well, right? And you're going to put like heart and soul into it. Also, yes, we hadn't really worked together on a professional level, but I had seen your work and I'd seen the way you approach work, right? And I think it ran very well with mine. And I just felt like, based on the similarities in our background, obviously based on the strong relationship we have,
Yeah.
uh, the family relationship, and also just sort of like the fact that we had worked in similar places together, gone to the same school. I mean, it's not even like I feel like you said, right? We're closer. I feel like you're my closest sibling, and a lot of that has to do with just like that shared similarity in background. So it just made sense that I would work on this with you. So yeah, and that, like I said, right, a bunch of things. The soil was fertile. The idea, I got invested in it. I saw how um, the potential, and then also just kind of like, and I think most importantly, I felt like uh, we would make a strong team, and we will be able to keep ourselves accountable and actually take this very seriously. And that was enough, that was enough to convince me.
Awesome, great. Thanks for sharing. I I'll just share a small anecdote. I always laugh when I think of this, but it's I know when we were younger, for example, I guess some of our aunties, and even sometimes our mommy would say, "Oh, how is your son?" Asking me about you, right? So because one a year and a half older, a lot of times I was in a place before you, so it was like taking you through the strings, it was through the ropes of a place, of a new place. And even like in McKinsey, in McKinsey, it was slightly different because um I had gotten in first, but you started first, and an uncle of ours made a joke that you were going to clean my desk in preparation for me. So I thought that was funny. But anyway, but I mean, for what that's worth, right? I bring that up because the relationship has really changed. I feel our relationship has also changed because when you're younger, I'm in a place first, right? But I do really feel like at this stage I get so much inspiration from you as well, like even as I said, starting this. So it's definitely one where AK is no more quote unquote my son or my the person that is cleaning my desk. Like we work very much from a place of equality. And even, AK, in many ways, you also mentor me, right? So again, just saying how lucky to be building this with you. But now changing gears a bit, right? Um, so here we are, we've decided to go on this journey together. It's August 17th, 2021. It's actually a day before my 30th birthday. And we're putting up, this is the first meeting we have when it's barely an idea, just trying to understand what do we even need to understand first to know if this is a viable idea. Who do we need to talk to? What do we need to know about the market? Who are the competitors? At that point, who are the competitors? Who are inspirations? So we have like this sheets, folio sheets, which we sort of put up in Auntie Chichi's house, right, on the walls in Auntie Chichi's house, and that's just the idea beginning to form. Now, fast forward what, a year and a half later, and we have a product. We are beginning to build a strong team. Um, it's gone from that sheet of paper or those two sheets of papers in a room in Anshichi's house to something beyond an idea. So I want us to now talk about this, the journey so far from that point. And really ask you, I guess the first question would be, um, yes, thanks. So here is the, one of those sheets of papers that we mentioned, the very first time an idea, where we're scribbling, okay, these are all the questions we have to ask, and these are the many things we don't know, right? This was, it wasn't, as I said, it was just the beginnings of an idea. So, okay, fast forward to
Yeah.
now, looking back, um, what would you say, let's start with joys, what have been some of the most rewarding moments of this journey for you?
Yeah, no, yeah, Ojiugo, sorry, I mean, that shit just brought back memories, right?
Mm,
And, because next to all the lines, there's like EU, OU, so like who is responsible, me or you? And like I remember, it was just, yeah, exactly, it was just kind of like a sheet of, it just lines, we transferred that to Excel, and that's how we started. And I remember one of the first things we did was to put together like a running sheet, right? We call it the master task sheet. And so
mm-hmm,
essentially, that's just how we did that for like a month or two to just guide us, and then slowly things started coming up. So in terms of joys, I mean, there've been a lot of joys, right? I think one was in April 1st, when we had practiced so basically there was this opportunity, LSC funding, business like funding competition, and we had
London School
practiced
of
in,
Economics.
yeah, London School of Economics, exactly. So they had this funding competition for like alumni who had who had founded companies. It didn't have to be like a tech startup, but it had to be like a startup business. And we participated in that virtually, right? So we had spent time like reworking the deck. I think by that time we had also started thinking about like starting fundraising. So this was going to be our first check, if you will, and it was going to be a grant. But I think there was also something about it being a competition, and like the first, I think it was pretty much the very first time we're going to validate our idea, at least
Mm,
from an investor's perspective. So I remember we were one of the winners, right? So I remember when they announced, that we had won. That was a super high moment, and
mm,
I was really really happy about that. And it just kind of felt like I feel like it gave us a much needed confidence with which we now approached fundraising.
mhm.
But one moment I just want to share, right, which was a real joy, but it was sort of very understated joy, was the very first time the very first prototype, right, played like we saw it, as like a product. It was still in the development environment though. And he pressed play, right? He pressed the play button, and I heard like story playing, right? Like
Mm,
for me, that was just like, oh wow, like we're actually well on our way. And I think this was in February or March of 2022. So like we're well on our way to actually not just designing, which we had gotten someone to help us and together we designed, but to actually build this thing into a product that people could actually play. So that was like a real moment of joy. And I think that moment like made it very real for me in terms of what we're doing. And it was a very huge encouragement as we continued on our turbulent turbulent journey. Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think for is this those because I didn't actually know till recently that you had that experience with uh that private viewing. For me, it came a bit later when the app was a bit more built out. And just seeing, and having it in my hand, and this is real. That moment of this is real. But anyway, okay, thanks for sharing both the one of, you know, as you said, public validation from outside through that LSC generates win, as well as that private one where no one knows, and no one can, at that point we hadn't even released the beta. We were months away from it. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And now to even because I think yes, there have been wins, but we are new enough for there to have been a lot more downs than highs, at least for me. So I'm just like, of course, I know some of them because we're doing this together, and you know, oftentimes I'll message you or we'll talk and be like, hey, Iki, I'm, feeling down. This is what's going on. And just having that second person that is typically maybe, either there with you or at a more high level, like feeling better and stronger has been awesome. But just please share with our audience about some of those low moments for you, um those times when you've asked yourself, who sent
Yeah.
me? What am I doing? Why didn't I stay on the corporate track? you know yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure that's not an everyday thought? No, I'm joking. I'm joking. But first of all, I want to say like, yeah, like the before I had gone into like entrepreneurship, I had heard this thing about if you're trying to start a business or a startup, it's like you're encouraged to start with someone, and I know that that's something investors actually look out for, like, oh, that this person has a co-founder. In fact, there are certain accelerators or funds that will not consider you, or even if they consider you, they consider you on the basis of you have to go and find somebody to be your co-founder. And I mean, I think going through this process, this ongoing journey, because
Mm-hmm.
there's still a lot
Yeah.
coming our way, I'm very sure. It has just shown me like it's very important to have someone else there, because there are times when, just knowing that there's somebody else on the journey with you acts as a motivator. There are times when that person literally will be the person to motivate you, and there are times when you will actually be that motivation for somebody else. As you feel a responsibility to the other person, you don't want to let them down. So that's I found that to be very powerful. But in terms of the a low for me, Ojiugo, I think this was also one for you as well. So we had this roadmap, right, to build our MVP, minimum viable product, right? So like a beta before April.
Mm-hmm.
We actually
Mm-hmm.
build it by the end of March, right? Because we gave ourselves 3 months in 2022. And we now wanted to have that in hand and then take that and raise funds. So because we bootstrapped, right? Like we spent literally like savings. Like I remember
Yeah.
going to the bank to bring our USD. Yeah,
Yeah.
this one. That's so
And the
I
account
know
balance is going down. It's going
it's going down.
with no,
It's going down.
yeah.
Nothing is coming in. All outflow, no inflow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and 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 then right, we realized that I mean we basically had to the developer who was working with us, who was I mean absolutely fantastic, but he just had other commitments. I just saw biological. We saw recently that he made CTO in the
Yeah.
company that he's
Mm-hmm.
working for, which is fantastic, right? So very brilliant guy, but he just was committed to something else and he couldn't continue working with us. And so essentially, what that meant was like we had no product, and
Mm-hmm.
we reached out. So we now reached out to the technology partners right out of India, who we've been working with, but we're now in the process of transitioning out of. And we now said, okay, what would it cost for you guys to build this whole thing for us? Because they have just been helping us with one particular part of the whole app, and they give us the bill. And the bill was at that point. I think it ended up being slightly more, but I think at that point, I think I can say it right. The bill they gave us was like $15,000, and Ojiugo and I just went back and I was just like, okay, how, like, where am I going to get this money from, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
if you shook Ojiugo and I's pockets, everything, you couldn't find that,
Yeah.
because keep in mind that I had just got married the
Yep.
December
We
of
had also,
2021, so
yeah.
yeah,
We
we
had
had
also
also been
invested what we
spending.
had.
Exactly, we had also invested what we had. So what that just meant was we needed to go and raise funds even before we had a product, right? And that's always harder to do. And I think for us personally, that's not really what we wanted to do.
Mm.
So that was a no. I mean, that was interesting because I remember lying down on the bed and I was just kind of like, I don't know, like like how do we move forward? And then I think slept it off. Well, actually, I didn't even sleep it off. I think on Slack, right? I think after like 30 minutes or 45 minutes of receiving that email, and we had talked about it briefly. I just sent a message on Slack. I was like, I guess we have to go and find the money. And Ojiugo, I think you said it took you a bit longer to sort of like get to that point, but we just realized like, yeah, we have to go and get the money. So, like I said, April 1st, got announced that we were going to receive, about $5,000 from this grant. So at least that was a huge boost. And then we went on to successfully raise our first round, friends and family. Did that within 6 weeks. So that was a major boost, right? And we were able to now get another high that we rode.
Mm-hmm.
But and for me, right, it's just testament of like, you know, I don't know, like the support system that we each provide, right? And also
Yeah.
just kind of like I guess the strength of our convictions, because from that low, feeling very deflated to like achieving such a massive win in the space of a month and a half or 2 months, I think was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Okay, I think we both shared that low because it's at such a young stage in the company as well. Again, pre-product, there was nothing, and just feeling like everything had come to a head. It would have been easy for us to stop at that point, right? We had no investors, we had no one that, I mean, we had told a few friends that we want to do this, right? But there was really nothing stopping us from rolling up the mat, folding them, and saying, okay, I guess we tried this for a bit and it didn't work. And I think that low, and that I mean, I think that was one of the lowest points, right? But even later, as we try to, for me, I think another one too is just not getting, the user numbers we thought we'll get in the first 2 months. I think my idea of growth was very, like, extremely optimistic. I was like, we're going to have 100,000 users in 5 months, and then the market just slaps you and says, I mean, from where? How? Oh, you have these 20 ideas that you're going to do, and you've done all of them, but that has only brought, a fraction of that amount. So that has been also extremely humbling for me. And I think you jokingly said when I was asking you, what are those moments where you ask yourself, why am I doing this? Who sent me? And you said, are you sure that's not an everyday thing? I mean, sometimes it is, but I think for me, especially these this year, since, I mean, and it's been a short year, but even late last year, I think it's been very powerful to connect as well with people that are interacting with the Genti app, right? So beyond just my own experiences of being able to use my phone and learn Hausa, which I started learning during my NYC in Kebbi. Actually, even before that in secondary school, but really like learning it in Kebbi, and then trying to improve it and being able to do that more easily because we onboarded a course on Genti, and being able to buttress that by listening to radio drama in Hausa on Genti and looking for other programs, like listening to, you know, Ugezen Nunu, a collection of Igbo poems, which I first got to know about by Reverend Anini Akudibu. I first got to know about it in 2010, around when I read Ngigi Wathiungo. So being able to see some of these things in one place, right? Um, yes, it has been powerful, and it's been powerful to experience the app and to have that, but even more so to hear how others are using the app. I think whether it's talking to, doing a virtual meet and greet, hearing the lady talk about how she opened the app and couldn't believe her eyes and was like, I need to send this to all my students who are trying to learn Yoruba, or whether it's, because of a curated section for that, or whether it's, plain Kusi, a pigeon story in a cab as we go, and without saying anything as we're dropping, the cab driver says, oh my god, what was just playing? I want to listen to that. Where is it? Or having, that person find out that, that boat driver find out that we have the Bible, in Yoruba on Genti app, and saying, please, you need to download it for me before you leave this place. Whether it's, so that, I mean, there's just so many stories, but essentially I'm saying for me, the highs have been also very much tied to talking to people in the community, in our community of listeners, um, you know, people using the app and interacting with it. In addition to, of course, digging deep into the why of why, we started this, continuing to be focused on the vision of Genti. And it makes me think, right? Like they always say, talk to users. Um, and we do, but there's such an opportunity to talk to them more. Anyway, AK, I would like to talk to you and find out also, you know, again, some of those things you hold on to that encourage you. But before I hear from you, this is a good time for us to have some advertising. And when we get back, I'll hear from you, AK. So stay tuned and enjoy this ad break.
I closed and opened my eyes repeatedly. My legs were raised higher than my body. I was naked, except for a piece of clothing covering my nakedness. Doctor was between my legs with the nurses standing beside him. Please, I don't want to die. Please, I don't want to die. Maybe if there was a God somewhere, he would hear me. For more of this, please download the Genti app. I cringed in the corner of my room as I heard Mother's voice from the sitting room. She's in the bathroom, Mama Zainab replied. I could feel the lack of confidence in her voice. She was afraid of my mother. What nonsense! Is she giving birth in the bathroom? Will you call her out for me this minute? I do not have time for this nonsense. Mother shouted at her as soon as I heard the sound of her shoe as she walked away, climbing the staircase that led to the room. I waited until I could hear it no more. Then, I slowly stood up, holding a hand to my rumbling tummy, and went back to bed. For more of this, please download the Genti audio app.
Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that ad break. Got to hear some of the exciting work some of the work from creators in our communities, both writers Toby Loba and from actors as well, Chidima Chima, that we are curating and collating to create exciting content for people to listen to on Genti. So I think before we went off to the ad break, AK, I was just asking you. I had shared a few experiences and how talking to people in our community has kept me anchored and encouraged. So, having shared some of your lows, through those lows, in addition to, of course, the support we provide for ourselves, to ourselves, and the greater, support system we have with our friends, our family, and our investors, is there anything else that sort of keeps you going?
Um, the fact that I'm married and I have a wife at home. No. But I think Ojiugo, something you said around the users, or even just like people who are impacted by the products, not the products, the platform, and what we're really offering.
Mhm.
I think is really, really like that. That resonates with me and my experience as well. I just found out yesterday that a pretty popular Nollywood actor, anyway, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag, right? But pretty popular Hollywood actor is excited about Genti and is actually going to do some work with us, right? And I mean, for somebody who, has been in, Nollywood, has been in the audiovisual space, for them to get excited about something strictly in the audio space and
Mm.
something that, like, it's just being built. I think just really it's a huge dose of encouragement. I think also, right, Ojiugo, like you said, just hearing people discover again, like people who discover again, to talk about their experience, on the app and the fact that wow, like look at this type of platform. They would have loved to have this platform ever since, and they haven't seen anything like this before. You know, I think it's just really powerful. Sometimes because we've sat with this idea, we've been working on this on a day-to-day basis, right? You don't really realize. Sometimes it's easy to forget that we spotted a gap,
Mm-hmm.
something we saw as like a big gap that we're filling, and we sometimes we forget how like impactful filling that gap can be, right? We know that that's why we're doing it, and you know in our heads, we know that okay, there are users who, the whole point is to get users who are excited about this to use it. But hearing somebody actually voice their, you
Mm-hmm.
know, experience and voice their excitement about finding and their gratitude about finding Genti, I think is just really powerful. Um, yeah, like that same experience as well with
Yeah.
the Yoruba lady who actually like I think she teaches Yoruba. She has students that she takes through Yoruba, and when she found Genti and saw the Yoruba content, and obviously the expectation is that that content is going to be increasing, right? Like the number of works that we have and the hours of content. To see how excited she was, and she said, "Oh, she went to tell her students about it." For me, that was just really powerful because you can just imagine thousands and millions of people who are out there who want a product like this. So we just have to, I guess, it just encourages us to continue
Mhm.
and to figure out a way to get Genti in front of them.
Yeah. Precisely. Our growth push. Okay. So, AK, as we round up now, begin to round up this conversation, I'm curious to hear also about your vision moving forward. Or maybe not so much vision, but the things you're really looking forward to, right? We launched our app to the public in August of last year, after launching a beta in June. So this is now 6 months since our public launch. What are some things that you're excited for and that you're looking forward to as we continue on this journey?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot of things, but I'll just highlight, a few. I think the first thing I'm looking forward to is just having more users discover um, Genti, right? Like I said, right, the experiences I've had with people talking to me, to us, and how powerful that is. Like I'm just really excited to see more and more people find out about Genti, and so that's why we're trying to figure out, creative ways to make sure that we do that, right? So I'm really looking forward to that. And what comes along with that, right, is also like the expansion of our networks, right? So the creator network that we're building now, in terms of writers, actors, and just general creatives. I think really looking forward to seeing those communities grow as well. I'm looking forward to sort of the constant improvement of the app, right? Like
Mm,
imagine what the app is going to look like a year from now, because I know that there's going to be, fixes, iterations, and the like. So I'm just sort of like really looking forward to where the technology is going to go, especially as we're now as we get to a place where we're able to like bring in more people, right? Who obviously will be empowered to sort of like carry out their ideas and just see how that pushes our product forward. Um, and then I think just in general, I'm looking forward to actually I'm looking forward to our content, like our production, right?
mm,
Like I think that there's and a lot of it, Ojigo, I think is coming from you because I think you do have strong ideas in terms of what our content push should look like. But I'm just really looking forward to more original content and higher quality original content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a year from now, what is a Genti original going to look like? What are the types of stories we're able to tell, right? What are the types of topics we're able to cover? Who are the types of individuals we're able to get involved in creating that content? Actors, right? You have this whole thing around um, the day you know that Getty is, has blown is when Flavor voices a romance story for Getty, right? That like there's no
In
basically I think you're
Igbo,
saying that
and Igbo, yeah,
yeah, there's no Igbo woman, I mean born of a woman or something who wouldn't listen to that story. But
yes,
basically, right, just seeing how how the different like people we can involve in producing stuff for Genti, right, and actually having that um, and actually having that content out there. I think I'm just really looking forward to that. So,
yeah.
but I mean, in general, right, I just want to say like I'm looking forward to the journey. I know that sounds a bit, I don't know, might sound a bit cliche or whatever, but I think it's true.
Mm-hmm.
There's something from my own experience, right? Like every day, right, we wake up, we work on this, and every day we make some additional progress, right? So I'm just really looking forward to continuing that journey because 100% convinced that this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Genti is what I'm supposed to be building. It's starting off now as an idea about like audio content. Who knows where Genti Media will go? We might, explore new vistas. I mean, we're now experimenting with this, sort of like TV format. Who knows, the different vistas that we can, sort of, I guess, conquer or whatever.
Yeah.
So the journey is exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
A wide expanse to be explored. So many things. I think one I would double down on because I think I totally agree with you. But in terms of one that I would double down on, which we have also started getting questions around, is around our creator economy and space. And people often ask, what is the opportunity that Genti offers African storytellers? And this is something that we have begun building our monetization play, right? But it's still at the early stages. So I'm so excited as we you know finish building the technology aspect that can help storytellers, whether that's writers or actors voicing content, to earn money beyond what we currently have right now. But even in the present moment, right, I'm also excited to do more of what we are doing, and that opportunity, and to see more people uptake, more African storytellers take up the opportunities that are offered to explore new ways of sort of reaching the audience through audio. And I find that that can be extremely powerful, especially for people that are creating in languages where people there are not as many people who read the languages. So whether that's pidgin authors or people writing in their local language and telling stories or keen to tell those stories, I'm excited for the opportunity that people are taking. We have several, pigeon works we're onboarding. We have, a pigeon story which is doing very well. We have a pigeon competition. So I'm excited for more people taking that opportunity, because I know that for many, while they might not be able to read a language, they can hear it and enjoy it. So the opportunity that gives storytellers, African storytellers, to reach wider audiences that can really enjoy their work without thinking about accessibility. I'm excited about that. So I think that's one of the current opportunities, even as we continue to finalize and build on our monetization approach. Um,
Yeah. No, so very quickly, Ojigo,
mhm,
what you said, I think really struck a chord. I can't wait, because the pitching competition is still on and stories are coming in, right? I
mhm,
can't wait for us to, we're continuing to receive. I can't wait for us to do the process of like judging and selecting the best and actually then producing that into audio content, because some of the stories that I've actually read are like really really good. And
Mhm.
I'm so excited because and it's like this, where would people actually feel comfortable, bringing out this content, and where could they actually showcase? Because like,
Yeah.
I mean, these are like very talented people who are producing, like creating work in, I mean, in such an authentic voice, right? Because pidgin is an authentic Nigerian voice. um Ijo is an authentic Nigerian voice, right? Like writing, and there's differences in the way you structure the sentences. There's differences in the thought patterns. There's different, right? And that is really what it means to be Nigerian. So I'm just really excited to, be able to sort of be
Yeah.
part of that process of, or like provide an opportunity, right, for people to showcase their talents and showcase the authentic Nigerian experience, authentic African stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Because we have Pan African, vision. That is the goal. Yeah, totally. Okay, totally echoing what you've said, and I think just picking from a few as we round up, but a few comments that have come in, comments and questions. So that's someone says, uh, I'm really excited about Genti. Um, will you limit the stories to African storytellers? Uh, and then so that's it. Both, thank you for your excitement. We are excited too. Then there's also another question asking Genti's mission to enable Africans to tell their stories fearlessly. This seems disruptive to the status quo. What kinds of stories is Genti not willing to touch? So for us, I think inherent even in those questions is the excitement, which we appreciate and which we feel as well, right? And we do believe that it can also be very disruptive. In terms of the question around will we limit the stories to African storytellers? I think limit is not the word I would use. I would say focus, right? And
Okay.
I say focus because there is there is such a rich there's so many stories that we just feel, so many stories, so many voices, right, like across languages, that we just feel are being told, but in different disparate places. And by focusing a platform, which that's what we're doing, focusing a platform on African stories, which we believe is not like is underserved in a way, is focusing, is not limiting. So I think there's so much depth. I mean, if you think of Nigeria alone, we have such a huge and wide linguistic variety, over 500 languages. Talk less about Africa at large. Deep oral traditions. That have not been fully digitized and brought to the fore because of so much of storytelling has been happening in the written format more recently. But how can we begin to curate and collate, and create that focused space so that these voices can really be heard? So I don't. I hope that answers that. And to the question, I'll take a first stab. Then, AK, you can also touch on if you want. In terms of the stories we're not willing to touch, I mean, at this point, it's just things that are hateful, right? People that are any stories that fosters hate as opposed to one that fosters community and curiosity. That's not what we're trying to do. But beyond that, there's no sort of because there's so much, right? There are people doing action. There's because when we say African storytelling in local languages, that is not limited to a specific kind, right? Our experiences are so diverse, right? There's the person that loves action or mystery or comedy or thrillers or supernatural. There's just such a wealth of storytelling and telling. There's messages, there's conversations, there's you know folk tales by our elders. There's so much. So it's more, as much as it is not hateful or infringing on other people's sort of space, we welcome those stories. AK, I think there's one more question. Maybe you can touch on it as I before I then close off. How
How can
can
I
one?
join the how can I join the Genti community? That's a great question. So, what I would say the first step is to join the Genti community as a listener. And to do that, right, you can go to your Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and just type in Genti Audio, and you'll see our app, and you download it and you sign up right away. You can sign up via Google, via Facebook. So there's, you know, different ways you can sign up and you can start listening. You can also go on, you can also just go to gentimedia.com. That's GENTIMEDIA.com. And you'll also be able to download the app from there. In addition to that, what I would say is you can go on our Facebook, Genti Media, or our Instagram at Genti Media, and or Twitter as well, same handle at Genti Media. And just sort of stay updated. You'll see on Facebook specifically, you'll see a way to join the creator, sort of network that we have. So if you're a storyteller, right, if you are an actor, you can join that community. There's WhatsApp group that you can join, and then you stay updated on that side as well. But the first step is just download Genti, sign up, start listening.
Yeah, some great questions and also comments coming in, that came in there. At this point, I think we're going to round off the inaugural of Tongues and Voices. It's been amazing having you, Ike, as my first guest. What better way to start than to talk about our journey so far? Thank you to my co-founder and chief operating officer, and just all around doing anything that needs to be done person. Excited for what we're building and for the community that we're building. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Ojiugo, for having me, and thanks everyone.